All right, we've got a bunch to get through, so I'll go ahead and get started. I just want to thank everyone for being here this morning and just taking the time to come and join this webinar. We've got a lot of great content lined up. We've got BANKW staffing here to talk a little bit about staffing. We've got our very own webinar bot, and then we've also got Delcie Bean, CEO of Paragus IT. So a little bit about us. We are a MSP, so we are an IT company. So we are either in a company's entire IT department or we work internally with their internal IT department. We have an office in Hadley, Massachusetts, and Worcester, Massachusetts, and we are 100% employee owned. So just going to introduce our speakers. Starting off, we have Jason Alexander he's the co-founder of BANKW Staffing, and he's also the Chief Revenue Officer. Jason, I'll let you say a little bit about yourself and just introduce yourself to everyone.
I'd be happy to. Thank you very much, Mary. Um, Thanks everybody for joining, and thanks to Mary and Delcie for hosting here as well as Webster. I don't want to leave you. I don't want to leave you out. Um, so I'm Jason Alexander. I'm Chief Revenue Officer and co-founder of BankW Staffing, as you see here on the slide. Our family of companies is New England based, New England focused. We have a group of specialized staffing and recruiting and consulting organizations that focus on everything from IT, software, human resources, administrative, sales, finance, accounting, and legal placement services.
Awesome. And we'll go over to the next presenter, who is Delcie Bean. He is the founder and CEO of Paragus IT, and I'll let Delcie introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. For those of you who I have not had a chance to meet yet, my name is Delcie Bean. I'm the founder and CEO of Paragus IT. As Mary said, we partner with organizations to either become their IT department or to assist their internal IT department with all things technology. And a big focus of ours is to be a true partner to our clients and helping them navigate the complex world of technology, which is constantly changing. A big piece of that right now has certainly been AI. And so really the conversation we want to have today is an opportunity to explore kind of where does AI fit into your strategy right now when it comes to the need for tasks to be completed. What tasks should you be sending to an outsource company? What tasks should you be hiring for? And which tasks should you be using AI for? And we're going to do a different format today. It's going to be largely just kind of panel discussion, conversational. So I'm very much looking forward to this. It'll be a nice break from the way we've been doing it. And I'm excited for you guys to meet our next guest.
With that said, I would like to introduce Webster, the webinar bot. We will have him go ahead and introduce himself. He's the Chief Webinar Intelligence Officer, and he's also the Webinar Experience Coordinator. So Webster, if you want to introduce yourself.
Absolutely, Mary. Here's a little intro for me. Hi, everyone. I'm Webster, the webinar bot, your friendly, witty AI panelist here to chat about when it makes sense to build bots versus hiring or outsourcing. Think of me as the digital sidekick who loves automating the repetitive stuff, freeing up your human teams to do what they do best. I'm here to share real-world insights on how AI can help businesses work smarter, not harder, without stealing anyone's job. Promise. Ready to tackle your questions and sprinkle in some fun along the way. Let's get this conversation started.
Awesome. Thank you, Webster. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. I am going to start with a question for Jason from a staffing perspective. Jason, hiring's not dead, but obviously it's very, very different. What's changed the most in how companies should approach recruiting today?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question and a multifaceted one at that. I think one of the challenges that employers are seeing as well as job seekers is that technology and the advances of technology, especially AI, have in some ways made the hiring and job seeking process easier and more streamlined, but in a lot of ways have actually gone so far as to throw a little bit of a wrench in the works. What I mean by that is applying to jobs has become um, almost too easy, where individuals can use both commercial products as well as homegrown AI systems to apply to hundreds, if not thousands of jobs all in one fell swoop and one click of the mouse. It's causing employers to be dealing with hundreds, if not thousands of resumes at times for each individual position that they've posted out online, almost ensuring that they're not going to find the best candidate for the job in that large a pile. So employers are having to rely a little bit too heavily on technology to evaluate resumes. Candidates are relying a little bit too much on AI to apply for jobs, and I think it's really causing employers to rethink before posting that open job. Do I want the influx of resumes? Do I want to work with a staffing company like ours? Do I want to outsource some of this function, if it's a technology function, to an organization like Paragus IT? And it's making some traditional decisions a lot more difficult.
Yeah, in the same token, just a follow-up question for that. From the app, the I think it's app, I can't think of what the past tense is, but the person applying, right? You know, what can they, you know, when they're or when they're looking at all of these resumes, right? Um, how can they fight the AI, right? Because a lot of, recruiters are actually using AI to look at these resumes. So, from like somebody applying that perspective, like how can they not get discouraged with, maybe some of the rejections they're getting?
Well, to answer your last question, I really haven't come up with a good answer for how not to get discouraged when applying to jobs over and over and over again and not getting any response. One of the best practices that I talk about quite often, and as well as being a chief revenue officer, I'm also our de facto chief internal career advisor. And in working with a lot of executives in their job searches, one of the first things that I say is if you're going to take the time to apply for a job, putting your best foot forward is important. Now, that's a cliche that, sounds good, but what does that mean? So what that really means is making sure that you've gone through an optimization process, not using the same resume over and over and over again to apply to each individual position, but looking at each job and making sure that you're matching keywords and key phrases from the job description as applicable to your resume to ensure that if there is an AI or an algorithm-driven evaluation process happening on the employer side, that your resume is scoring as highly as possible because it's got all those keywords and those key phrases. And a lot of that can be, there are commercial systems out there that are designed for this very thing. You can very easily leverage AI tools like Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini to help you optimize the resume in an automated fashion. I will say this, for anybody using this, make sure that you're respecting the notion that AI engines do sometimes make things up. So before you just copy, paste, and send the results to an employer, make sure that everything that came out is what you've actually done. But the day of coming up with the days of coming up with that one stock resume to then send out to the world has kind of become antiquated, where that job by job resume optimization process is going to give you the best shot at getting that call back.
Yeah, that makes
Well,
sense.
just Mary, if I could, Jason, I think the flip side of what you just described, though, actually compounds the first problem that you identified, which is the more that these candidates are using AI to draft perfect resumes, perfect cover letters, totally curated for that job, for the employer, now instead of having 20 applicants that you can very quickly tell who put effort in and who didn't. Now you've got 1,000 applicants and all of them look great. They all sound so professional and have exactly the right resume. And to your point earlier about it's hard to find the good candidates in the mass or kind of through the noise, it just makes it harder when the candidates can look that much more professional and polished and like they put in so much more effort. The good candidates don't rise to the top of the pile anymore. And as an employer, we've certainly struggled with that a lot.
Yeah, and if you're sitting on 1,000 resumes for a job, the only guarantee I can make you is or not guarantee, but the highest probability is that you're not going to find the right candidate in that needle in a stack of needles search. So that's where it becomes, and honestly, we deal with organizations that will sometimes come to us and say, we want you to help us recruit for a position. We'll give you the resumes. We just need you to go through them and figure out who the best candidates are. So, that's time and expense that went into producing that ad in the first place. It probably includes some time and expense of doing a preliminary evaluation of some of those resumes before realizing that you're wildly overwhelmed. And now you're going to pay for a staffing service on top of all of the efforts that you've already undertaken, which begs the question, is it worthwhile starting off with the staffing company, starting off with the outsourcing firm, and realizing that sometimes the traditional means that people and organizations use to find the right candidate just don't work the way they used to work anymore.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think in that token, we'll just pivot a little bit. I want to ask Delcie, in terms of outsourcing, how does outsourcing help businesses scale smarter, not just faster? When we're thinking about, putting up a job application, taking all the time to look at all the resumes, it might make a lot of sense for an organization to outsource. So can you just talk about when that might be something that is a better option than putting out a job offer?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I think it's a great way to start off. From my perspective, I think the adage of focus on what you're really good at or focus on your core business is the simplest and best advice. We're in a world now that's becoming increasingly competitive. It's more and more global competition or regional competition, or it's much more competitive, however you want to define that market. And in every case, you've got more and more organizations leveraging technology and all kinds of advantages to be competitive and to out displace their competitors. In that environment, you need to focus on your core strength and you need to be a specialist at that. Anything that you're not a specialist at, you probably do need a specialist in. And it's very difficult, especially today, for a business to try to create a specialty in each of the functions of its business. If it depends on critical, cutting edge, really thoughtful marketing, but it is not a marketing company, it probably needs to outsource some, if not all, of that responsibility to a firm that is truly specialized on that. And I think obviously that, I'm a little bit biased here, but the same applies to technology. If you are not a technology company or a company that is designed to support technology, you need a specialist when it comes to cyber, when it comes to security, when it comes to monitoring and insurance and compliance, making sure your staff are getting all the right answers. It's such a complex field that you need not only one specialist, you need a whole team of specialists. And those are the kind of things that I think maybe 30, 40 years ago, we would build these companies where we had all these departments and we try to be great at everything that we needed to be able to be good at. And we never were great. We were maybe good at best. I don't think that is competitive in 2025. I think organizations need to have a lean staff that are really focused on their core competencies and what their value proposition is to the world. And then the other parts of the business that are critical to their success that they're not great at or not going to be specialists in should be outsourced to specialists.
Yeah, that's a lot of good points. I think too, it can be a little bit overwhelming when you're thinking of, even from a very high perspective, being like, some companies don't even have the bandwidth to recognize what they are good at internally and what they should be outsourcing. And I actually think this will be a great question for Webster. How can AI help an organization recognize when they should hire someone or outsource something?
Great question, Mary. AI can actually be a pretty savvy advisor when it comes to figuring out whether to hire or outsource. Here's how. AI can analyze loads of data like workload patterns, project complexity, costs, and employee capacity, and spot trends that humans might miss. For example, if a task or project keeps popping up regularly and requires specialized skills, AI can flag that it might make sense to hire someone in-house for long-term efficiency. On the flip side, if the work is more sporadic, project-based, or requires niche expertise that's too costly to maintain internally, AI can suggest outsourcing as the smarter move. Some AI tools even run what-if scenarios, modeling costs, timelines, and risks of hiring versus outsourcing, giving leaders a data-backed recommendation instead of just a gut feeling. So really, AI helps leaders cut through the noise and make smarter, evidence-based decisions about where to invest in people and where to lean on external experts. Pretty neat, right?
It is, and I think it's a really good thing to keep in mind that, it doesn't always have to be, offloading things to an AI to do. But even just trying to make that decision about, when to hire somebody, when to outsource, developing the role description and things like that. I do want to pivot and ask you another question, Webster. When we are talking about using AI for a task, can you just kind of describe to us what kind of tasks are you actually good at versus what are the ones that have been overhyped and oversaturated right now?
Ah, the classic, what can you really do question. Love it. Here's the scoop, Mary. I'm fantastic at handling repetitive, data-heavy tasks. Think data entry, scheduling, basic customer inquiries, or sorting through mountains of information to find exactly what you need. Those are my sweet spots where I shine and free up humans to focus on the bigger picture. Now, the overhyped stuff? Sometimes people expect me to replace complex human judgment, deep creativity, or emotional intelligence overnight. Spoiler alert, I'm not about to write the next great novel or negotiate a tough contract solo yet. Those nuanced, strategic, or highly relational tasks are still firmly in the human court. So, in short, I'm your go-to for automating the boring stuff that slows teams down, not for replacing the brilliant minds driving innovation and leadership. Make sense?
It does make sense. Thank you. I think just one more thing to follow up with that. I think we all kind of know that AI is here and it's here to stay. And rather than talking about some of the positive outcomes, I would actually like you to just touch on some of the mistakes that companies make when they first implement AI. If you could just talk a little bit about that, that'd be super awesome.
Oh, this one's a classic. Mary, the biggest stumble I see is overhyping AI before understanding what it can actually do. Companies sometimes expect me to be a magic wand that fixes everything instantly, from skyrocketing sales to solving every operational headache overnight. Spoiler alert, that's not how it works. Another biggie is rushing into AI without a clear strategy or understanding of the problem they're trying to solve. They toss in bots without thinking about how they'll fit into existing workflows or how humans will interact with them. That's like buying a Ferrari but not knowing how to drive stick shift. Lots of power but not much forward movement. Plus, ignoring change management, forgetting to train teams, communicate the benefits or address fears, turns the rollout into a rocky ride. So my advice: start small, set realistic expectations, involve your people, and build AI into your processes thoughtfully. AI is not a silver bullet, but it can be a game changer when done right. What's your take on that?
Yeah, those are all really good points. I think having some sort of framework before you go into it is really awesome. And again, just kind of understanding, what tasks you have, where you have, maybe some gaps in, labor, things like that, are super helpful for making a decision about when something should be done by AI. I do want to ask Jason, kind of in the same token, when is hiring in-house absolutely the right move? And then when could it possibly be a mistake?
Well, it's interesting. I was listening to some of the questions that were just being asked and answered just before, and I thought about I'm going to make an observation on the last thing and then answer your question. Uh, One area that I believe AI can be very effective in is to develop consistent training and development materials for your organization. Organizations generally are deficient when it comes to training and talent development. And one of the questions I ask when I consult with organizations is, what do you do for a living? What is it your company makes, does, whatever? And they'll tell me they do this service or they build this widget or whatever it is. And I will always say, wrong answer. If done, I believe if done properly, develop talent, and talent develops your widgets. So the more an organization can develop a talent, can have a talent development program, and a robust one at that, opens up the playing field significantly to the amount of candidates that you could be hiring, because you don't have to spot hire to those specific skills. You can hire the right person, the right personality, whatever it might be, and train them the way that you want them. So to answer your question, oftentimes I'll ask, if somebody comes to us with a hiring requirement, I'll ask why. Why is it open? And how prepared are you for this person to be onboarded and to be made successful? And a lot of times I'll get some questions like a little bit of a deer in the headlights. Um, I firmly believe that a lot of organizations just hire, not just to hire, but they hire because they feel like they're growing without actually developing a structure that's going to cater to the employee's best interest, their career progression, their development goals, things like that. And if you can't cater to the needs of that candidate, they're not going to be a long-term employee. Turnover, as we know, incredibly expensive. So I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, are we really prepared to make this employee successful? Is there a growth trajectory? Is there the training, development, mentorship, leadership, day-to-day management, and supervision necessary to make this seat and this individual in that seat successful? If the answer is no, if you have a hard look in the mirror and ask those questions and come up with answers that might be no, you may want to consider outsourcing it to either a temporary resource in the interim or to an outsourced service like Paragus IT that can take and own that entire piece so you can focus on your core business.
Yeah, I just want
Yeah,
to really echo what Jason just said because I think he said it perfectly. Where we see on the candidate side, people applying for jobs with us that are coming from internal IT, the number one reason they're leaving internal IT is they were an island. They were a single person with a manager who didn't understand what they did. They had nobody to mentor them, coach them, develop them. And so they stuck around for 12, 18, maybe 24 months and then left. And then somebody else came into their place and stayed for the same amount of time and then left. And that cycle just continues. And I think to Jason's point, it's because the organization hasn't set up a pathway for that person to thrive in that organization, but they've hired them as if there is one. And I think that disconnect is where you can run into real frustrations. And at best, they leave it worse. They become disengaged and unproductive, and they're just kind of causing problems.
Yeah, and I would say I would to add on to that, it's like when I ask the question, are you really ready for this person? More often than not, it catches people off guard. And the most common answer I'll get is yes, we have a desk, we have an office ready, whatever the case is. Well, that's, you covered about 3% of the battle with that answer. The other 97% comes with the structure, the mentorship, the development, all the things that Delcie and I just talked about for sure. So I think that you know, understanding that question in the first place, are you ready for this candidate? And then truly answering with your most honest voice is gonna really set you up for success instead of just constantly throwing money, throwing bodies at the problem without having a pathway for success in place.
yeah, it's like you're entering into a relationship, right? Like you've got to make sure that you're ready to put in the time, the commitment, really invest in that person if you really want to get the best out of them, which is going to be their best performance. And people don't perform well if they don't feel like they're valued, or taken care of. So it's a very, very good point. Um, I think this is a really good segue question for Delcie. When can outsourcing actually improve culture or team performance? I know we kind of just talked about that a little bit, but if you could just expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you have something that's critical for the business, and you don't set up the organization for success, you can damage the culture, the satisfaction, the experience of all the other employees. First, you're harming the business. If you're depending on a really great marketing, if you're depending on really great IT, if you're depending on really anything that you're not an in-house expert of that your business isn't focused on, but you're not getting the level of performance that you need, you're harming the business, but you're also harming the employees that are there because they're frustrated. They're frustrated when they can't get the IT help they need or when they can't get the response time they need on a marketing piece or a PDF doesn't get turned around quickly. Those are all things that harm the experience of everybody else. It also dilutes your purpose a little bit. It makes it harder because you're trying to cater to so many different audiences and have so many different conversations and be everything to everybody, both internally but also then externally. I think where organizations can really thrive is when they focus on this is the thing that we're going to be great at. We're going to hire people who fit into this pizza wheel. We're all going to contribute. We're all going to understand how our piece contributes to the greater whole. We all know that if we're successful, we're all interconnected. We're going to see the drive forward. And then anything else that doesn't fit into that core focus wheel, we're going to outsource, and we're going to choose really good partners that not only are great at what they do, but who also align with our core values and our culture. And I think that's a mistake that sometimes firms make when they outsource, is they just go based on price, maybe features, but culture is a really important part of choosing an outsourced partner, especially if that's a partner who's going to be interacting with your staff a lot. They need to get your culture, you need to get their culture, and there needs to be some alignment. We have said no to customers who have tried to hire us when we've seen there's a very big disconnect in our cultures, and we just know going in, this isn't going to be the right fit. And I would very much encourage customers or companies to do the same when you're choosing those partners, is make sure that this partnership is going to strengthen your culture, not harm it or dilute it.
Yeah, it's a good point. I do just want to call out, there's a question in the chat, Delcie, from Steve Ryan. He asked, does Paragus IT recommend a particular large language model?
Yeah, so when it comes to these bot builders and kind of these strategies, and we could ask Webster what he thinks too, but from my perspective, there isn't a single LLM that we view as like the end all be all answer to every question. The more that we have worked in the space and the more bots that we have built, the more we've actually realized that it is a very nuanced process. It's a little bit like hiring an employee. I can't tell you who the perfect employee is. I can't tell you who the perfect outsourcing partner is. It really is specific to the situation. You have to do a little bit of a needs-based analysis, like what are the expectations? What are we trying to accomplish? What are the goals and objectives? And you need to prioritize that a little bit because you can't have everything all the time. So kind of like when we're doing design engineering, where we have to like prioritize, we would love it to do all these things, but in this order is how we need to rank them, because we may have to give up one thing to get another. And in these LLMs, for example, ChatGPT, in my experience, is probably the most sophisticated at language. We've used ChatGPT to build the Webster, the webinar bot who's with us today. And I would say that of the, kind of commercially available AIs that are kind of large language models based, it's the most sophisticated with human conversation, the kind of thing that we're doing today. However, to Jason's point, it's also one of the most frustrating when it comes to hallucinations. It is trained on such a large data set that no matter how much data we give it, it's such a minute percentage of its total training that it's very hard to get it to just focus on the data that we're giving it and not consider everything else it knows and start to bring things into conversations. So for example, if I was building a bot to converse with my employees about HR issues, I might be very nervous to build that in ChatGPT's large language model because it may give answers to questions that are outside of my employee handbook. It may just give an answer that sounds very smart and very intelligent based on all the data and training it has, but it may not be applicable to my company, and it could give an employee the wrong answer. So we are very, as much as we would love to just pick one large language model, build all of our bots on that platform, and become experts at it, what we realized very early on in our journey is that what we actually have to do is become experts at knowing which large language models to bring in when, and also when to not use a large language model, which has been a more recent development. There are some tasks and functions that we actually have to build the AI not using an LLM, but training it entirely and exclusively on companies' data, because any external data is going to potentially cause a diversion from the very, very specific responses it needs to be able to give. So it's a navigating course, and it really is kind of the right tool for the right task is the simplest way I can put that.
Yeah, and we did do a webinar back in October, which was ChatGPT, Copilot, or Gemini, which one is best for your business, or we really went into specific use cases about when to use each one. Steve, I'll drop that in the chat so you can just take a peek at it. But I do want to get the AI's opinion on this. So Webster, how do you choose the right large language model for the job or project?
Choosing the right large language model, LLM. Now that's a strategic move. Here's how I'd break it down, Mary. First, you've got to consider the task complexity and domain. Some LLMs are generalists, great for broad conversational use, while others are fine-tuned for specific industries like finance, healthcare, or legal. Picking a model trained on the right kind of data makes a huge difference. Next up, performance and accuracy matter. You want a model that delivers reliable results for your use case without getting tripped up by nuance or jargon. Don't forget about scalability and cost. Some LLMs are beasts that require heavy compute power and can get pricey, while others are leaner and more budget-friendly, so matching your needs to your budget is key. Also, think about integration and customization. How easy is it to plug the model into your existing systems? Can you tweak it to better fit your unique workflows? Finally, consider privacy and compliance, especially if you're dealing with sensitive info. Some LLM providers offer stronger data protections or on-premise deployment options. So, choosing the right LLM is like picking the right tool from a toolbox. It's all about matching the model's strengths to your specific job. What kind of projects are you thinking about?
Well, Mary, just to add to that briefly, somebody in the chat mentioned RAG, which is a whole nother thing that we're starting to get into of using these basically tools, for lack of a better term, that are going to aggregate different models and different tools and different data sets. We often, when we're building bots these days, it's rarely a single bot. It's usually several bots that are being orchestrated by another bot that's kind of managing the bots, and then there's usually a supervisor bot who's overseeing the outputs. And in those models, we actually can pull in different language models into one tool. So one outcome could potentially have multiple LLMs and company trained data and AI that is not using an LLM all behind it. And it is getting more and more sophisticated the more that we go down this road.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think things are ever changing. I think just as long as, when you're thinking about specific projects and use cases, like we said, just really looking at, integration, how often you're going to need it. So like if it's going to reoccur, things like that. I don't think there's a perfect answer, but I do think that there is a tool for every job. You just have to know how to use which tool. Along that, we also got another question from Steve. I'm not sure who wants to take this one first, but how do you handle fears of AI agents taking someone's job? Jason, I don't know if you've had any experience with this in the staffing world, if you want to take that first.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, I think first of all, with any with any groundbreaking technological breakthrough that we've ever experienced in this country, um, it's worth noting. I hear far too many people saying, "Don't worry, AI is not here to take your job," or whatever the case might be. I think the first realization we have to come to grips with is AI will take people's jobs. Not everyone's, but some people's. The same way that the automotive industry wiped out the horse and buggy market, there's going to be something about an AI bot that's going to take the place of some customer service jobs, some sales jobs, some human interaction type jobs, as well as um, a variety of other places. So first and foremost, it's important that the individual person is able to compete against that potential obsolescence by making themselves indisposable, by familiarizing themselves with things that are happening outside of their desk, their cubicle, or their office, making themselves cross-departmentally, reliable, needed, known, whatever the case might be. So those are all the things that, regardless of whether we're talking about combating AI, these are all really important things to be doing as any professional at any level, anyway. So with that being said, I also think that in some cases people are overblowing the amount of jobs that AI is going to take away and assuming it's just going to start doing the job of everybody in every office everywhere, and that's just not going to be the case. I mean, at least at this stage in the game, as Webster put it, relying on AI for things that are reliant upon situational understandings in emotional intelligence, creative and critical thinking, just in a lot of cases can't be replaced by the simple use of ChatGPT or another LLM. So, Delcie, I'm not sure what your thoughts are there as well, but I'd be curious on what you think.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I'm guilty of for several years, when we first started getting into AI space, we did a lot of the, hey, don't worry, this isn't going to take your job. They're just there to help you. It's an aid, it's an assistant, it's going to make you better at your job. It's not going to take your job. But I agree with Jason. We're now past that point. And the way that I'm thinking about it is, if we go back, many, hundreds of years even, and we look at how often people changed professions, it used to be that we didn't change professions for generations. If your dad was something, you were something, your grandfather was something, like for 100 years, your family was doing the same profession. Then we kind of got into a world where maybe you go off to college and you pick your own profession, and then that's your profession for the rest of your working life. Then we got to kind of this next generation who were changing careers 2 or 3 times in their working professional life. And we thought that was crazy. Now, the latest data I've seen is that millennials may change jobs as often as 16 times, or the next generation behind them. So, what I think we're seeing is the same kind of Moore's Law exponential curve happening in how many jobs that we have and how many types of careers that we have. And I do think that these two things are going to marry each other very well. As jobs get replaced by AI, there's going to be newer, better, more exciting, more interesting jobs for us to take. And we have already proven that we are a population of people that want that change, that want that development, and that are prepared to change jobs often and frequently. And I think that's just part of that exponential curve of, we're going to keep shifting faster and faster and probably have shorter and shorter durations in the same career, or at least doing the exact same job within that career. And then also including some major career changes during that path. With lifespans expanding, with all the changes to the educational market, there's so much happening right now that I think we should all just become very comfortable with the idea that we're going to have a lot of jobs in our working life, and that we may take sabbaticals, we may come in and out of the workforce, we may go back to school 5 years, 10 years, 15 years into our professional life. School may be very different. It may not be something that we take time off for and go to an educational institution. So I think all of this is changing. I think AI is just part of that story. I don't think it is the whole story. I think some of this was happening anyway, but AI is definitely going to enhance it, like any other technology changed us from being farmers to factory workers to industrial workers to intelligence workers. This is along those same spectrum.
Yeah, I think I do want to get Webster's take on the original question, which was, how do you handle fears of AI taking someone's job? Just 'cause I'm curious what that perspective will be.
Oh, Mary, that's a crucial one, because culture can make or break any AI rollout. Here's how I'd approach easing those job security jitters. First, transparency is everything. Leaders need to openly communicate why AI is being introduced, not as a job killer, but as a productivity booster and teammate that handles repetitive tasks. When people understand the why and how, fear starts to fade. Second, involve employees early and often. Get their input on which tasks they find tedious or frustrating, and show how AI can help lighten their load. When folks feel heard and see AI as a tool that makes their work more meaningful, they're way more on board. Third, offer training and reskilling opportunities. If AI takes over routine stuff, employees can be empowered to develop new skills, think higher value, creative or strategic roles. That growth mindset helps shift the narrative from replaced to upgraded. And lastly, highlight success stories. Share examples where AI freed up time, boosted morale, or even helped teams innovate. Real-world wins make the benefits tangible and relatable. Bottom line, it's about building trust, showing respect, and positioning AI as the teammate that's here to help, not replace. What's your experience with this kind of cultural shift?
Thanks, Webster. We kind of talked about it a little bit. But yeah, I think just to wrap up this question, just emphasizing the getting rid of like the mundane, repetitive tasks, and just that will allow employees to have more creative freedom, while also emphasizing too, just like Jason originally said, it's a good incentive to get ahead of it and to be knowledgeable about what the changes are.
And Mary, it's also worth just pointing out that throughout the last 300-400 years, as these technologies have advanced the way that we work, we've also enjoyed much better work-life balance. We've worked less than we do now. I mean, there's the whole concept of a 5-day work week with a 2-day a 2-day weekend, and now more and more companies doing a 4-day work week with a 3-day weekend. The idea that we're working these 8 to 5 shifts instead of 12-hour shifts. Like, the flip side of this is if we embrace the change and we look at it as this is going to be good for all, there is definitely a viewpoint, and it's only a viewpoint because everything is possible. We don't know what's going to happen, but there is definitely a viewpoint in which this could lead to us working shorter days, shorter weeks, less hours, more time to invest in ourselves, to be part of our communities, to give back to our families, to just be doing things other than our work, but still being able to earn a living wage that's sustainable, that allows us to feed our families and exist. So there is that utopian perspective that this ultimately could be good for the human race in the end.
Yeah, it's a good point. This is a question that I just kind of came up with just hearing all of this. I think, when we're talking about staffing, outsourcing, and even AI to some extent, at the core of this is people, right? And a lot of the times, our society, like when you want to get a job, you have to go to college. So this is a question for everyone. Do you think the college degree will go down in value with the rise of AI? This is obviously something that's been talked about a lot. A lot less people are going to college, and as we get access to more information at our fingertips, obviously, you could create a platform and a program within, a large language model to give you a college education spread out over the course of 4 years. So, we'd just love to hear each of your takes on the value of the college degree.
Jason, you want to start?
Yeah, why not? I think in general, the value of the college degree has been going down. I think that we've seen, especially the value of the undergrad degree been going down, and the value of the specialized graduate degree going up a little bit, because what we find tend to what I tend to see is that a lot of organizations, a lot of traditional institutions of higher learning, so to speak, tend to have an adoption rate of new curriculum that is dramatically slower than the adoption rate of new technologies, new business practices, new things in the business community. So what I'm in essence saying is when in a lot of cases, when you're graduating with this degree, you're coming out with a skill set that's already become somewhat obsolete and behind the curve of what is of what's being used out in the marketplace. So I think that the organizations, the education institutions that are really grasping it are grasping a little bit more of a vocational um, school practice that are showing delivering hands-on opportunities to students a lot earlier in the process and giving them practical experience coming out of the process as opposed to the traditional kind of theoretical experience with that one internship kind of a thing. Do I see it getting do I see that uh, continuing, especially with the influence of AI? 100% absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think the soft skills are something that are really important. People skills, negotiating skills. I think those are huge for a college degree. But if you're not going to an institution that's valuing experiential learning and, like you said, really having that application and not just the classroom part, I agree. I think that it's not going to be beneficial for you, and it's not going to be beneficial to your wallet either.
Yeah, I think my perspective would be, I think it's going to matter which institution you went to much, much more than it has. I think the idea of just a generic college degree is falling off a cliff in terms of having any marketability and any value. I think obviously you've got a couple of things working. You have fields that are still very regulated that require certain education and certain degrees. Right now, those are protected. If I want to be a doctor, I got to go to medical school. There's no way around that. So there are certain fields and industries that I think are going to value it because it's just baked into the compliance. They don't have a choice. Then you're going to have like the top 5 institutions, the top 10 institutions. Harvard's not going to be worthless tomorrow. Yale, Princeton, the Ivy Leagues, the really prestigious universities. There's a whole culture and ecosystem there. There's a lot of brand recognition. There's a lot of kind of alumni working with graduates and kind of institutional relationships. That's probably safe for a while longer, probably not forever, but a much longer period of time. And then I think the third category is maybe what Mary was starting to speak about, which is companies having a very particular knowledge of a specific institution and have a lot of respect for how that institution is approaching education. So really feeling confident that this institution is doing highly experiential learning. They're teaching students critical thinking skills as opposed to actual knowledge and skills tasks. They're really focused on building a knowledge worker, a thought worker, a creative problem solver that I'm going to be able to take and employ. And they're going to have a base of all kinds of different experiences and softer skills that I'm going to be able to capitalize and put to work, no matter how often my work changes, because my work is going to change constantly too. So what you learned is less important, and how you learned and how you learn is really what's going to be more valuable. And that's going to be hard to hit at mass scale. It's going to be, I almost think we're going to go back to a more regional approach where an employer is going to develop really good relationships with one or two universities or educational resources in that market. They're going to have really good trust and rapport. They're going to be contributory towards what that curriculum looks like. And I think you're going to have these like little micro ecosystems where you go to college is going to be very connected to where you end up getting your first job, because there's going to be relationships and partnerships there. Much more so like what the community college model used to look like, and I think is moving back to. And in some ways, the community colleges are leading the charge on this. They're doing some of the most innovative work on this, kind of getting back to a vocational employer-based relationship. And I love all that. The one missing piece is how AI fits in. And I think one of the things I am most excited about with AI is the potential disruption to education. This concept that we all get taught the same way. There's one person talking to a lecture hall of 3,000, or in a K through 12 classroom. You've got 30 kids in a room. Everybody learns differently. Everybody has different base knowledge, but they're all supposed to learn exactly the same way and sit in this chair. This idea that we can have individualized, personalized learning, curated to the way our brain works, curated to what we understand, what we don't understand, being able to ask questions in real time without interrupting the whole class. There's so much value in leveraging AI as professional tutors and knowledge transfer mechanisms. Not completely wiping out the industry, because I think there is so much to be said for that professorial experience and those classmate relationships, but there is definitely an opportunity to have some pretty cool disruption there.
Yeah, I'll have Webster answer as well. And this will be our wrap-up question, then we can open it up for questions. So Webster, how do you think the college degree and its value will be affected with the rise of AI?
Ah, the million-dollar question, Mary. Will the college degree lose value as AI rises? Here's my take. AI is definitely shaking things up by automating routine tasks and making knowledge more accessible. That said, a college degree isn't just about memorizing facts. It's about learning how to think critically, solve problems, and communicate effectively. Those skills remain gold, even in an AI-powered world. What might change is how people get those skills. We could see more alternative learning paths, like micro-credentials, boot camps, and hands-on experience, becoming more valued alongside traditional degrees. So instead of a degree losing value, I'd say the education landscape is evolving. The real winners will be those who combine strong foundational skills with adaptability to work alongside AI tools. In short, college degrees won't disappear, but continuous learning and agility will become the new currency. What do you think? Are we looking at an education revolution?
Yeah, I think that was a very good answer from Webster. It definitely aligns with, what we're all talking about, and that ultimately that they're not going to go away, but they are going to evolve for sure. I know we had a few questions that were posted in the chat, but I did want to just leave some time if anybody else had some final questions, if anybody wanted to unmute and ask any of us any questions, please feel free. And then I will also have Delcie throw up everyone's contact information as well. If anyone has any questions, maybe you just didn't want to answer in the presentation, Delcie's email, Jason's email, and then even Webster has his email up there. So you can feel free to shoot us, any of us, an email, and we'd be happy to follow up with you after the presentation.
This is where I would used to kick in with saying Bueller over and over again, and then I realized people stopped knowing what I was talking about and aged myself out of the conversation.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jason.
Mary, what did you share with everybody in Teams yesterday? about 2050?
So 2050, so on July 12th, 2025, we will officially be closer to 2050 than 2000. If you needed some spiraling information today, there you go.
And as we've talked about, like, we're talking about what's happening with AI right now. The most impressive piece about this is how quickly it's changing. I mean, Jason and I, we're talking about staffing and outsourcing. These have been around for decades. The idea of employing people has obviously been around for hundreds and thousands of years. These are things that haven't changed a whole lot. They've evolved and they have definitely, there's nuances and they've gotten better and there's more sophistication to them, but the fundamental relationships haven't changed dramatically. This AI thing is not only fundamentally just different, it's also changing so rapidly. If we did the same webinar a year from now, I guarantee you we'd be having a different conversation. And just to Mary's point, trying to fathom what this conversation will sound like in 2050, it's really, really hard to do. It's almost impossible to do. I really struggle with thinking about what this is going to look like if you just fast forward to 2050 at the rate of change that we're at now, not even factoring in the fact that that rate of change is probably exponential, meaning it's only going to get sharper. But even just at our current trajectory, going out 25 years, it hurts my brain to think about. And it's one of these things that more than anything, we just need to become adaptable to change, and we need to get much more comfortable with change and much more build organizations that are ready and adaptable to anything that's happening, because we're not going to have a strategy that's a 5-year strategy that we can sit down and stick to. That's just not a reality in 2025.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's going to be, I think vision documents and strategy documents are going to be more like 1 year rather than 10, 15 years, just because of how fast everything is rapidly changing, for sure.
And Jason, I'm
I
curious.
think,
Go ahead.
oh, no, you please go ahead. What were we going to ask?
I was just going to ask, how have you, as a staffing agency, started to use AI in your own practice? Like, where does the AI fit within the staffing?
Well, it's we're starting to see more and more AI built into our CRM and applicant tracking systems, which makes, ease of it's theoretically anyway, makes ease of searching candidates and searching jobs and things like that a little bit more effective. What I've noticed though is I do a lot of training on career advising, and more and more as we continue along, I become almost more of an AI advisor than I become a career advisor because of how powerful some of these tools can be when you're looking for a job, for example. Um, and this might sound incredibly basic for some of you, and it might sound like an aha moment for others, but one of the hardest things to get people over when using an AI platform is to get out of that really hardened, ingrained Google searching mode. For many, many years, for decades now, we've been doing keyword, key phrase searching on Google, and before that Yahoo, and before that Alta Vista, and before that Lycos, and so on and so forth. Um, whereas with AI, I try to tell people to treat the AI that you're using like your best, most intelligent friend, and just ask it what's on your mind. So, for example, it's a great use case for that is if I'm a job seeker and I'm considering going to work for Paragus IT, and I'm not really sure what to do, and I'm not really sure how to present myself, and I'm not really sure what to write or what to send or whatever it might be. Well, ask those questions and project that uncertainty in real life language to ChatGPT and say, here's my resume. I'm considering going to work for Paragus IT. I'm not really sure what to do, but could you help me formulate and articulate my value proposition and my return on investment opportunity and things like that, where it would make me seem like a wise investment to this organization. And you will be shocked at the kind of output you're going to get from just that one example. And that can go on and on and on when it comes to, you know, I've thought about there's a lot of scrutiny out there for people who write using AI, who write blog posts or books or articles or whatever it might be. But if you think of yourself as a conductor, think of yourself as somebody who, if you can become a prompting master, you're essentially doing, and I'm taking this line out of the movie Steve Jobs, but you're essentially doing what a conductor does. A conductor doesn't play an instrument. A conductor plays the orchestra. And if you can play the AI with the right prompting and the right education on how to wield it to your best interest, you're gonna get much better results. And I oftentimes see far too many people still doing kind of with brevity in mind, keyword key phrase searching on ChatGPT as opposed to writing a paragraph just stating your needs. It will understand you. It will figure out what you want. And it will do it with incredible accuracy in a lot of cases. Just be careful it doesn't make too much stuff up on the back end. But you know what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely.
One last question for Webster. Do you think we need to worry about AI being biased when doing things like screening and ranking resumes?
Absolutely, Mary. Bias in AI is a big deal, and definitely something organizations need to take seriously, especially when it comes to sensitive tasks like screening and ranking resumes. AI models learn from historical data, and if that data reflects past human biases like gender, race, or age preferences, the AI can unintentionally perpetuate or even amplify those biases. That's a real risk when hiring decisions are on the line. The good news? With thoughtful design and ongoing monitoring, companies can mitigate bias. That means using diverse training data, regularly auditing AI outputs, and combining AI insights with human judgment, not leaving the whole decision to the bot. Transparency is key too. Letting candidates and teams understand how AI is being used helps build trust. So yes, bias is a worry, but it's manageable with the right approach. AI can actually help reduce bias if designed and used responsibly, like flagging inconsistencies or blind spots humans might miss. What's your take on balancing AI efficiency with fairness in hiring?
That is a great answer. I don't know if either of you want to just quickly follow up. We have 2 minutes left. But yeah, I think it's important to integrate it with human intervention because obviously can't emphasize enough the hallucination aspect. So it's definitely something to think about for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I've seen the studies where companies have moved towards removing names from resumes when managers and hiring teams are screening them because there may be biases that they automatically apply, maybe even just unconsciously when they see a name on a resume, and they assume a gender and a race and a religion and all these other things kind of get prescribed, and how they will screen and rank different candidates when the names are removed. I think a little bit to Webster's point, that could happen with AI. It could maybe find something that we are maybe intrinsically biased against because we're also biased people. Whether we want to be or not, we all have our biases. Um, but I think I love that kind of partnership where the bot can be biased, and at the same time, the bot can help us with our biases, and collaborating together is probably going to get us the best outcomes.
I think that you're going to see a lot. I mean, there is bias in AI, there's going to statistically be a lot less bias in AI than there's going to be with the on the human side. Um, there's unfortunately far too much bias, I think, out there in the hiring market. I have seen it, I've experienced it. I'm sure I'll continue to experience it, and not tolerate it either. But too much discrimination out there in the hiring market, whether it be based on gender or race or age or whatever it might be. It's just all terribly unfortunate. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to the solution, the combination of technological and human interaction that can or intervention that can eliminate the bias and eliminate any discrimination in the hiring process completely and totally. Because it completely gets in the way as somebody who's selfishly it's going to get in the way of finding that perfect candidate. Because you're eliminating their candidacy based on a name type or an age or whatever it might be.
Yep. I agree completely.
All right. Well, we're at 11:01. I don't want to keep anyone, but thank you everyone for joining. Be sure to send out the recording to all of you. And then, yeah, if you guys have any questions, hopefully we're done our emails, feel free to follow up. In the follow-up email, we also have 2 exciting webinars coming up within the next 2 months. So be sure to register for those there.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Mary.
everyone.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks everyone for
Webster.
the opportunity.
Bye-bye.